Oh my gosh. All right, so I think we're good now. Basically, I have the monitor on the camera, but with the camera, the monitors flipped upside down because I just flipped it like this, and I don't know how to turn it the other way. So yeah, we're just gonna have flipped a camera the whole time. It's great. Also, my mic will probably die during this thing. No wonder why. This is turned off. Okay. What we did is we said, hey, when I originally made Anime Batman, I didn't want the color grade to be too extreme because I didn't want to make it bad, you know? Like, I wanted it to be good, and I wasn't confident enough in my ability to color grade, because it just, you know, you see a lot of people do it when they first start off, and their stuff just looks, their colors look bad, and they look oversaturated or undersaturated, and they mess up skin tones, or it's like you can't put your time into it, and then you look at it later, you're like, man, I shouldn't have done it that way. And color grading for me has very much been, man, I look at it later and I'm like, dude, that sucks. Like, I always think it sucks later, and that's one thing. Like, normally I can live with the mistakes I make doing other things, like, oh yeah, I tried my best there. Yeah, with color grading, it's always just like, man. So what I did is I just added some contrast. I raised the black levels a little bit to give it a little filmy vibe, and put some grain in there to make it so it's not too sharp. And that was my original color grade. It wasn't too much of a difference there. Actually, if you watched Anime Batman with the raw footage versus the grade I actually put on it, you probably wouldn't notice the difference. Unless you're really just looking at it for that. But watching it, you know, there's not that much difference in actual effects. So what's the point of doing it then? So the point of color grading in film is supposed to be to add, like, convey some more emotion or some more feelings, and to actually, like, you know, it's part of the whole expressive process. You know, you have your lighting. So your audio is arguably the most important. Then you have probably your lighting is more important than like anything like resolution or frame rates or anything like that. Because if your lighting looks good and your audio is good, I mean, you're already halfway there to a decent quality production. But then you have your color is next, and if your color looks off, if your color looks pro, like if your color looks like it's a blockbuster movie, I mean, and you have good lighting and you have good audio, because those are the two more important things before that, I mean, your film is going to look pretty dang good. But, you know, messing it up with bad color is definitely a thing too. It's just as noticeable as bad audio. I mean, you can get over it. You can't really get over bad audio most of the time. Bad audio is super distracting. So number one thing, audio. But after all of that, and then lighting, get your color corrected. So what I'm going to go over here is I'm going to watch through this. This is the Re-Colorgrade that I did, and then I'm going to go walk through as the video kind of goes. I'm going to pause and I'm going to show, hey, this is what I was thinking when I made these changes, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I did to do that. I'm going to show you that in just a second here. So with the first scene here, I divided Anime Batman into a couple parts of the rising arc, and then that rising action, your peak, your falling action, your conclusion, the beginning, middle, end, whatever you want to call it. Introducing our characters here in the beginning, Jake and Tyler, my friends and main actors in this, Jake being the main guy, and then literally written in as a best friend, his name is Tyler, and wanted to get them just walking through the hallways. Actually, this is like a one take. This is actually our like second or third attempt, maybe. We just went with it. If you notice, the colors in their face versus the original, and here's the original, I'll pop it up in front of you right now, is the difference is going to be mostly with the amount of orangeness in their face and just the amount of that. And then there's a little bit, if you look into the background, of, what do we call it? Just blue teal-ish look. So it's a very safe way to grade, because the orange in your skins and the red in your skins are what we recognize as like human, and it makes them feel very warm and feel very inviting. And that's kind of what I was trying to achieve here. And it's a less extreme version of what will happen later. So It's also foreshadowing what the color palette will look like later without going too far. What this is I'll tell you how I did this later when you can see it in a more extreme sense. So let's just keep watching the video. So in this, it's a more extreme version of what I had before with the orange and the, you know, the orange and teal color grade that everyone does. But anyways, it's the orange and teal color grade. And then we're pulling this blue, teal, and, you know, kind of darker. It's got some contrast to it. The shadows are raised a little bit to give it that filmic look. As you can see, our black point here is darker than, is brighter than true black here. And the reason this has bars on it and is not actually in a filmic aspect ratio has to do with the fact that it was going on YouTube, and it was going through our school's media delivery stuff, which is all 16:9. So if you're wondering why I actually used bars instead of that, there's a reason. I'm not just one of those people who doesn't know that there's actually supposed to use bars. And if you notice here, actually this doesn't extend the whole way, so this is in the re-rendered, I messed it up.
Ready as ever.
But whatever, you can only do what you can do. I'm using a very like, it's very orange now, but the skin doesn't look not real. Notice how the skin still looks like it could be real. It just looks very crisp. Notice how the skin is you still have white spots in the skin. That's an important thing. Your skin has thinner areas and deeper areas. You have these reds where there's more blood in your face, and then you have this white. You can still have closer to whites in the paler parts of your skin. So your skin is tonal. It changes. Notice how always kind of a little bit flushed in the face, but under the eyes and around where the skin is moving, it's a different color, and that's normal. Sometimes when a true beginner would try to do stuff like this, they would forget about that, you know? They would go too far and remove those areas, and that's when you see bad color grades happen. Also notice that even though I changed the tones of the piece, the white on the headband is still white. That's because what I did is I masked this, and I used the HSL slider in Premiere, and I asked the face and the skin tones, and then I copied that Lumetri panel and I inverted the mask to now work on the background and everything else, and to add that more blue tonal to it. So as you can see in Jake's headband right here, I have that blue tonality coming in from the white, and that's because it's not bright enough, and it's still recognizing it as being the inverse of what's going on in their face. So it's that part there, versus this white is still going to be fine because it's not blue, you know? So we have all of that. And then to level it all out, I added on a contrast layer and the brightness layers. And I added those on last so that I could preserve the most image data from the camera, shooting in a normal profile, not shooting in log, not shooting in S-log, not shooting in a sign profile. I'm shooting in a normal profile for this. So to preserve as much color data, I put the face adjustments on first because I want to see them first, and then I put the blue tonality on after for our background, and that's our first layer. So we have our first layer named skin, and I believe that the other layer had a different name, but it's also first. And then second, over all of that goes our contrast layer. And the idea behind that is you're not going to mess up the data that's already there. You're actually you have to be conscious of the way you're influencing the levels of color, because your levels of data there can get messed up if you do them in a wrong order. This is all the same color grade through our rising action here. If you can see, it got very, very red there because you're actually getting more red in the face, and it's still orange, so I'm still okay with it before it hits perfect red. But your skin actually is a gradient from like white to red and not orange. Your skin just happens to show orange when light shines through it, which is an interesting thing there, if you didn't know. And these are all things I didn't know until like more recently, within the past year, and I didn't know these things when I was grading originally, so hence why I didn't have an original grade for this that looked like this. I had a different one, and I'm actually very happy with this, and you know why I would try to do it. I also think that the tonality of the gym in the background being more blue makes it feel more like more dramatic, and I think blue metallic, blue steel is kind of the vibe I wanted to get from the background here. But then going into the locker room scene, which is a whole completely different color grade. The rising action and the falling action are pretty much the same thing, but our locker room scene, as we can see Jake's face here, still that same orange look going on, but I wanted to blow out the whites a little bit more. So you see these lights have a different kind of glow to them as they're autofocus and everything, and the whites and the highlights are up. Our black level is a little bit more contrasty to really, you know, make it feel, the whites are up to make it feel more dreamlike, but the blacks are to make it feel different. You know, you want it to feel different than the rest of the piece. The rest of the piece feels very filmic. This, everything feels very extreme. You know, the white tail, everything's a little bit oversaturated in the background, but I still did not oversaturate the skin tones, and that was very important, because if you mess up your skin, you mess up your whole shot. You might as well, if you're gonna mess up your skin, you might as well not color grade at all, because it's way more distracting than it is helping your piece. But if you just tone your skin correctly and then do the whole background, that's when you'll see some actual improvements to what you're trying to accomplish. And what I'm trying to accomplish here is feel like this kind of dream state, this kind of afterlife state. I've seen comparisons to you know, I kind of thought it's a mix between like Harry Potter and what was Black Panther, where Black Panther's in that astral plane, and then Harry Potter where he meets, and spoiler alert, I think it's in 7 part 2, book 7 part 2, the movie, where he goes into that white kind of afterlife and he sees the life of Voldemort, you know, and whatever. It's you get the idea. But, and you know, the whites are a little bit higher, and it's very hard to see these kind of contrast shadows between this, and that's intentional. The blue here is also desaturated. Everything is desaturated except for the skin, because they're the most important thing in the scene. I didn't want to distract. The background is actually pretty distracting when you see the original footage. And so that's when the color grade is actually helping get our point across of where they are, what's going on, versus just, you know, having a color grade to have a color grade. It's to make it look more cinematic. If you're gonna make something look more cinematic, you're making it better at telling a story. That's what being cinematic is. You're telling it a story in a more creative way. And if you're not doing that, you're sidestepping the point. And so when we get to the final part here, it's the same kind of color grade. Since this was just a remaster version, I kind of left this. The blue, so the red tonality of this mixed with the blue grade, and if you can see there's like a blue edge on this silhouette of Jake here, that looks kind of weird. This actually looks different than it did in the previous renders. Because of that, I kind of just let it sit on top because it felt like too jarring of a shift to remove all of that entirely. And then we got the ending scene here, which is like this, and has the actual, it has a little bit more of a crop there, and I noticed that, but that's just because I changed the crop. One thing I also changed in this piece versus the other piece is, I think I changed a little bit of Tyler's one, so you can see the matte a little bit less, but maybe my crop is a little bit wider. I don't really know. Also, if you can see here in the shadows, there's this light that is just chilling there. But yeah, other than that, I really didn't change that much. I kind of let the colors from the color grade sit into this intro portion here. So this is very orange and blue, or orange and like steely and metallic-y more than like an orange and yellow and gray as the original kind of color to it. So it just kind of changed a little bit. But if you have any questions or want to know anything about, you know, the decisions I made, or if you want to recolor grade this piece yourself, by all means, the original file is 4K, and you can download that off of YouTube. I bet you can figure it out. It's not that hard, and you can download that and do your own color grade, and I'd love to see it. Just upload it somewhere and send it to me, message me, or anything like that. And yeah, if you have any more questions, just hit me up in the comments. You can find all the information to everything I've talked about here on my website. If you want to check out my podcast that goes weekly on Wednesdays, you can also find that on bradslice.com/podcast. Links for everything is in the description. And yeah, I hope everyone has a good day. It's coronavirus season, so stay safe, stay indoors, and I'll see you in the next video.